Are you about?
Listen, I don't know about you, but I started a business so I could do this. Travel, be with friends, be with family, create memories. I didn't do it to sit at the computer all day. I didn't do it so that I could just be in countless emails and Zoom meetings. I did it to create opportunities for myself and opportunities for others. So listen, if that's something that interests you, enjoying time with your friends, being out and about, definitely drop by Ericka Williams' Classy Climb blog. Check out the YouTube channel. We've got over 2,000 videos of free information that's actually changed people's lives. People actually post their new jobs, their new careers, their new businesses all the time over at the channel. Well, hello, everybody. You guys be the best guest today. Definitely drop your city and states in the chat for our guest and say hello to DION. DION Talk Financial Freedom. Let's give it the nice spill. I'm super excited to talk to you today, and I think our audience are going to have so many great questions for you, and we'll check on some of them. But DION, introduce yourself to our audience. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm totally going to steal the best guest I've had on today. The way you said that, I'm going to use that going forward. I am what people call the lazy investor. I reached financial freedom. I didn't start until I was 40. And I usually like to give the end story before I give the intro, because the intro is a little depressing and I don't want to set people off. So the end story is I invest for 12 years. I retire at the age of 52. So I started at 40, retired at 52, and now I never have to work again for the rest of my life. And I just travel and scuba dive and try to help other people figure out how to do something like that. So that's the end. So the end is worth doing.
For sure.
But the beginning, I was laid off from law enforcement after the 2008 housing crash, because when cities make less money, they don't have funding for police, and a bunch of us got laid off. I was a single parent with 3 kids. I found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name that I didn't know existed until the divorce, and started teaching at a CDL school, making $17 an hour. So that was the position I was in when I started. And that's why whenever I talk to anybody about real estate, I mean, some people's positions, their starting positions are better than mine. So maybe it'll go a little faster. But I try to tell everybody it's a minimum, it's a decade to go from whatever position you're in to making work completely optional. And some people have done it faster. I'm definitely not that 20-year-old or 24-year-old that has 300 deals in 2 months or something. It took a decade. It took me 2 years to save to get the very first investment. So it's a slow journey, but it's I can't put it into words how completely worth it is to never have to work again once work became optional. And I'm just happy to share with people that it's not complicated. I'm a pretty simple person, and if I can do it, I really believe anybody can.
Well, you guys, I'm so excited to have him on because I love his story. And somebody said only 3 minutes in and he's dropping gems. Yes, pretty much. So I want you guys to understand, I love stories where it's relatable. The average person watching my channel is 35 to 55 years old. They're trying to figure out how to make more money, how to invest in real estate. And 9 times out of 10, I want to bring on real life examples of people who've actually done it. They're not these perfect scenarios where they're making $200,000 a year and they just hopped out into real estate. I live in Austin, Texas, and so that's the story here. But that's not the story for everywhere. And I think one of the best parts of your story is where I heard you were divorced, and then you find out you have all this debt, but you're also laid off. It's like, what in the world? It's like a tornado hit.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was hitting rock bottom that kind of made me realize I need to take charge of my finances. I tried a couple times to get a pension, and after Desert Storm, the Marine Corps downsized, and so my path to a pension was taken away. 2008, law enforcement downsizes. My second path to a pension goes away, and I realized I have to create my own pension, and that's what took the decade.
Man. And so right now, what people, one of your videos, so 2 of his videos, I'll give you guys, losing friends during retirement. I was like, oh, I got to watch this video. And then another video you had that was really good, and you guys can check his channel out there. It was talking about your friends missing out on like $100,000 and how you were upset with yourself that you didn't convince them enough. And I just always want people to know, like your friends are convinced by your lifestyle. Your friends and family are convinced by how you lived. And so I guess I'll that was a multiple question. I didn't mean to do it that way. What is it like as you retire early? Like a real, I'm losing friends. Oh my God. I love a story I think you tell about your cop friend. You're both were kind of buying rentals, if I'm not mistaken, but I may be wrong. Start us off there if we can.
Yeah. So when I was investing, I didn't have a lot of money. I was in a lot of bad debt. I kept the house and the kids through the divorce, but I also got the debt and lost the job.
Hmm.
And so lenders told me there's really no way that I can buy rentals because I had what's called a bad debt to income ratio. I had
Okay.
so much debt. And I'm in a community property state. I'm in Washington.
Mhm.
If anybody's curious, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Uh, and so the debt was mine, even no matter who created it.
Hmm.
And the lender said, there's no way you can really buy rentals unless you made, like you said, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hmm.
And they like accidentally mentioned, unless you had rental income on your tax returns. And I thought, well, how would that work? So it started a conversation. So what I ended up doing is I moved from my house into an apartment,
Okay.
rented the house out. So for 2 years, I was working in a new industry, which was the CDL school, training people
Okay.
to drive trucks.
Hmm.
So I had to work for 2 years in a new industry to be bankable. I needed to save a down payment, money for closing costs and any repairs, right? So I was saving as much as I could. This is nerdy, but I was playing a game called World of Warcraft and selling
Yeah.
things online as a side hustle to make more
Uh-huh.
money, working a ton of overtime, and rented out the house. First year was really bad. I mean, I made every mistake I can think of as far as owning a rental goes. But at the 2 year mark, I was able to buy a duplex and move from the apartment into a duplex, move into one side, rent out the other. And I was paying about $1,500 a month for the apartment. When
Hmm.
I moved into the duplex, my portion of the payment was about $300. So when you're
Ooh.
making $17 an hour and you have a bunch of bad debt and your housing drops down about $1,200, that's like the biggest lever that I could pull to save more for the next purchase, which still took 2 years. Right? 4 years in, I bought two things. And I always hear these people. There's a guy, Mark Ashiro, the financial firefighter. He empties out all his retirement accounts and buys 14 rentals in 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
He's a phenomenal thing. He told me how challenging it was. I didn't do anything like that. I bought one
Hmm.
duplex. 2 years later, I bought another duplex. Then I came up with this thing that I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the video to get people to stick around. But what I'm known for is I have this strategy called the binder.
Hmm.
Actually got me invited on Bigger Pockets. They have me coming and speaking at BPCon this year in Vegas.
Hmm.
But the binder strategy is actually where my tenants ask me to raise the rent. And it's a lot easier if you own a rental. If not only you can get your rents to go up, but if your tenants are happy, because happy tenants don't trash your property and happy tenants don't leave.
That's right.
And so about the 4 year mark after owning the two duplexes and renting out the house, this thing started to happen called the income snowball.
Hmm.
So most of my life, I never made more than 60 grand as a cop, as a Marine, as a truck driver. I got one truck driving job that was going to make good money. I was on track to probably make 115
Hmm.
and they went on strike. So that didn't even happen.
Dang.
So it was a really slow, steady 2 years buy a place, 2 years buy a place. But then because the house was rented out, I was paying less for housing. I had the cash flow from the duplex. It was only a year and a half for the next one. Like
Right.
it cut 6 months off. And so I meet a lot of people that are like, well, I want to do 2 or 3 deals this year. And I'm like, 2 or 3 years per deal for me was fine.
Right.
It worked out because that 10 years is going to happen. The next 10 years. If
Oh my
somebody
God.
starts today and has never owned a rental, they would be in the graduating class of 2035. And if you can keep that in your mind, if it happened a little sooner, you'd be really happy. But if
Mhm.
you plan on 2 or 3 years and then it takes 10 years, you probably would have quit around year 5 or so.
Yeah.
So I like the 10-year plan. I like the slow and steady. I don't do anything creative. Until retiring, I never did a BRRRR method. I've never done
Mhm.
a flip or a wholesaler, or I hadn't even done a rehab. I buy rent ready or occupied properties. I fix them up. I talk with the tenants. I include them in setting the rent. That's how the binder strategy works, where they tell me what they want the rent to be. And at about 8 years, work became optional. And I did this thing, I call it a litmus test. For 4 more years, I continued to work, but didn't touch any money from my job for my
Mhm.
life. I started living off the rental income. The
Mhm.
job, all the money was funneled into buying the next property. So I was
Mhm.
continuing to add assets. But I had 4 years where I didn't have to touch a paycheck. And so when I retired in 2022, I had a 4 year proof of concept where
Mhm.
I don't need this job. I loved the job. I got demoted down to the management at the school towards the end. And I really enjoyed the job and probably would have worked until 65 or 70, like most people do, until I realized what the power of time freedom,
Right.
right? I can explain later in the video if you like, how everybody watching can triple the amount of life in every year. And that's what I did when I retired.
I love it. I mean, so you guys, all the things you think of, didn't get a pension from the military, didn't get a pension from being a cop, making $17 an hour. You're a single father, or as we know, people say single father, single mothers, full custody father, right? The kids, how are the kids doing when you're doing these moves? They're just like, oh, we're moving in.
So what's great is a lot of people that I talk to say, well, there's no way I could, when you buy a duplex or do what I did, it's called house hacking. So it's kind of the term people refer. Sometimes it's have roommates. For me, I didn't want roommates because I had young kids.
Right.
Move into the duplex. People will say, I can't do it because I have kids. And I looked at it like, I need to do it because I have kids. Right. And when I presented it to them, right, as a single parent, I want to say we talked more than I think I did with my parents for sure. But my kids were excited. And so to break it down, the house we owned was on a lake with private lake access, tennis courts, it had everything.
Yeah.
But when I said, hey, I'm thinking of moving into an apartment so we can rent out the house, my son, who was a teenager, said, wait. You want to move into an apartment where all the other teenage girls live? He was on board. And then my daughters, there was some show out called The New Girl, which I didn't watch, but they did. And they were excited to get to move to a new place and be the new girl. And so until you have the conversation with your family, I wouldn't make up your mind thinking, I don't think they would ever want to do that. And maybe explaining, I didn't even have to explain to my kids the outcome, because for me, I'm not really trying to create generational wealth, right? I don't want my kids to think they're going to inherit millions. They will. I don't want them planning on it, because then they won't be motivated to be successful on their own.
Right.
My thing, I think the most important thing we can do as parents, or just as people, is make sure that we reach financial freedom so we don't become a financial burden to our kids when we're too old to work. And I know so many friends in their 40s or 50s and their parents are 60 or 70. The parents have to move in with them. Their cell phone, their insurance, they take care of everything because their parents didn't make a plan. And for me, when I'm 70 or 80, I want to have the cash flow from the real estate or the investments, and stocks can work as good or better. It can be real estate, it can be crypto, it can be being an entrepreneur and running your own business. Whatever way you reach financial freedom, pick one and master it. But I saw how my kids were with pets. I don't want them taking care of me. I want enough money to pay a professional in my last years. And so when I did that with the kids, it was actually pretty easy to move. And I house hacked once in the duplex with them, and then they got older and moved out. And then I house hacked again when I bought a fourplex. And when I retired in 2022 and 23, I'm house hacking again. I purchased a duplex right on the water in the Puget Sound. I walk down to the ferry and I take it over. I went over there yesterday with my friend Millennial Mike, the cop who invests.
Yeah.
Had lunch on the Seattle waterfront. This is my retirement place, but I wanted a duplex because I'm going to spend the next 2 months in Thailand, and then I'm going to go to Scotland for the summer, and then I'm going to go, I think, to Portugal for the winter this year, because I scuba dive wherever the water's good.
Yeah.
Somebody lives on my property, right? If there's a freeze, if there's a leak, if there's an Amazon package that needs to be taken in, and it makes money. So it's a lot easier to retire when you don't have a huge house payment over your head that you have to take care of if you travel.
Man. You guys, he's hitting on all cylinders. You guys know my talking points when I come on my channel. That's why I said I got to talk to DION. But I tell people all the time, like, it can be as simple as you make it. Retirement, travel, your kids, your life. So many people, if you could hear some of the really like heartbreaking calls I get from adults who are like, I'm paying for my mom a place to live. I'm paying for my sibling a place to live. And I'm in my 40s and I don't want to do this forever. And I'm like, I know what's going to happen. You're going to keep doing it because you love them. So now let's figure out how to invest in something. Let's buy some more rentals in Atlanta. Let's buy some more rentals in Florida. Let's buy something to offset where we know you're already going to pay your parents rent. You're going to do it because you don't want them homeless. You don't want them. Some people don't want them to live with them, but these are costs that are coming. How can we not look at our parents as a burden and not be frustrated with our parents because of the situation?
If a person learns how to invest and put their money to work, and they then have to take care of their parents, it would be a lot easier. And so the really simple math, while I was working, I was making, $17 an hour wasn't a lot, but I made more as I got demoted in the school to that around $60,000 a year.
Yeah.
It would be really hard to take care of my parents on $60,000 a year. But here's the cash flow, and I'll break it down in numbers for anybody who is like super picky. We're about 15 minutes into the video if you want to hear this again. I have 8 properties with 18 units. I specifically targeted a high cost of living area because more cash flow from less properties is what I was looking for. I don't want a big portfolio. The rent that comes in every month is about $35,000. I have about $9,000 in mortgages, and I set aside $5,000 a month to fix things. So it's about $60,000 a year for repairs, and I've never spent more than, I think my biggest year was $36,000. That leaves me with $21,000 a month that I'm actually trying to figure out how to spend, because the decade of living frugal, right? No vacations, old cars, house hacking, and all of that. You learn these skills to be frugal, so that when I retired, you have to learn how to flip the switch back. How do I go from save and invest to now I can spend it, and it piles up, and I'll probably buy more properties in the future. But I had to do these things that I call reverse budgets. So every month I require myself to spend at least $2,000 a month eating out. My vehicle will be at least $2,000 a month. When I travel, I don't get the cheap hotel. I get, not $400 a night, but a couple $100 a night in the cheap areas. So you get everything you can imagine with it. And it's actually been kind of fun trying to figure out how to flip those switches back to enjoying life.
And you're so young. Like, and again, I always preface this on this channel. I'll be telling people, I'm like, if you're going to live to 70 and you're 35, you're middle age, right? I tell people that. I'm like, sometimes if men don't take care of their health, they're out of here by 60 to 65. It's a thing of life, right? And so I just tell people, I'm like, what are the next 10 years look like for you? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? How do you want to spend time with your family, your kids? And so, you guys know my story, and it's not important for his story today. But one of the things I like with you were describing military towns, and I was like, I grew up in a military town, and there's so many veterans who they get their $3,000 check, they get a house, they stick their stuff there, and then they travel a little bit of the year and come back and be at that house, and they're your best tenants. My uncle had one tenant that was there for 15 years. He never bothered him. He cut his own grass, kept get off my lawn, kind of older dude, and he would travel overseas for a few months of the year. And we never had a problem with them. And I just think there's something to military towns in certain cities. And Seattle's beautiful, you guys. I talk a lot of crap about the West Coast, but I lived in Alaska as a kid. So the Seattle, Alaska corridor area, absolutely beautiful.
So with the military, there's something that I do because I think a lot of people should focus on one asset class to grow wealth, and then maybe you diversify later. So, I mean, if you're into stocks, I would master it. If you're into real estate, master it. If you're into crypto, master it. I chose real estate. I'm 100% in real estate. I don't own any crypto, any stocks. I don't have any money in a retirement account. So I wanted to protect it. And I diversified in 2 different ways. And the first one is the type of tenant. I maintain a not perfect balance, but the goal of about 1/3 military, 1/3 Section 8, 1/3 working or retired. So I'm ready for a pandemic, a stock market crash, a government shutdown, and it's only going to impact a part of my portfolio. Yeah. The other thing I did is I buy duplexes, but I made sure in the beginning when my portfolio was small that they were at least 10 miles apart. So I have one close to Tacoma, one close to Olympia, right? They're pulling from Boeing or Amazon or the college or the port or something. So if Boeing moves out of the state, one of my places might be impacted, but not all of them. Right. And so that gave me a lot more confidence in retirement to know that I had that diversification strategy.
And it's not too far to drive. Like it's in a roundabout way.
No, my furthest drive, I think, is about an hour during rush hour traffic. So, 10, 15 miles, they're all kind of spread out in a circle there. Can I go over 2 reasons why?
Oh, yeah.
Some motivation to retire?
Yeah, you got it.
And then any questions that come up in the chat, I'll answer on how I did it. But the first one, I call this the math of time. And I just want to look at like the year before I retired, which is what most people live something similar, right? 40-hour week job, raising kids or whatever. I was, 50, 60 hours a week because I was working overtime versus what it's like now that I'm retired. And so this is the math of time. While you're working, while you have to sell your life 1 hour at a time, most people work about 8 hours a day, sleep about 8 hours a day, have about an hour commute, have to do laundry and dishes and shopping and everything. So the average person gets about 5 hours a day. That's theirs. Like they own it. And most people are so exhausted. They're so wiped out.
Yep.
You can stare at a screen. So you got Netflix, Hulu,
Mhm.
online gaming, whatever it is, you're just wiped out compared to the year when I retired. So I've been retired a little over 2.5 years now. I still sleep 8 hours, right? It's weird. I never really sleep at night. I sleep whenever I feel like it. I haven't been tired in 2 years, so I'm not wiped out anymore. But I don't have 8 hours of work. I don't have an hour commute. Instead of 5 hours a day that are mine, I get 15.
Mhm.
And I'm never tired. Imagine what you can do. Like a lot of people say, I wouldn't want to get retired. I'd be bored. No. If you're retired, you have
Add to that.
hours where you're full of energy. I'm
Mhm.
paddleboarding, scuba diving. I just took a road trip. I flew to Louisiana and drove a friend's car back up here just because I was like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. I'll help you with that.
Yeah.
I can do anything with all that energy. And if you're living the life where you think, okay, you got your 5 hours and you're wiped out, you wouldn't want to retire. It's a very different world.
Mhm.
When I have a friend, Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time, who says every day is Saturday.
Yes.
There's no Mondays, right? Now, I say every night is Friday night. Right? It
Mhm.
never matters the time it is. It probably sucks to be one of my friends because I'll text at 2 in the morning or 11 in the morning, no different.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. And then we talked about parents and kids. This to me is the biggest motivation for retirement, that I probably wouldn't have retired unless I had this thought. It sucks. My parents passed away when I was in my 40s, so I didn't learn this soon enough. But with your parents, most of us got from when we were born to 18 or 16 or whenever we moved out. So you get those first 18 years. And when you have kids, you're going to have them for about 18 years.
Mhm.
The rest of your life, the rest of your kids' lives after they turn 18 and move out and get their own family or go to college or whatever, the number 19 is why I retired. You get 18 when you're raising your kids, and then the rest of your life, you're going to get one more year. If you took all of the family trips and the game nights and the holidays and all that, and you put it together, you're going to get another year. If you retire early, you open up your schedule. So I have 3 kids. My son's off Tuesday, Wednesday. I have a daughter who's off Saturday, Sunday. I have my other daughter who has revolving days off. So since my schedule's open, I can literally reach out and go, hey, let's go do something today. Go do whatever. So I'm going to get way more than 19 years with my
Mhm.
kids, because work, I mean, most of us are trapped selling our lives 1 hour at a time till we're at least 65, when security kind of makes us retire. You missed out on a couple of decades that you could have spent more time with your kids or your parents if you're lucky
Yeah.
enough for them to still be around.
Man, you guys, if you're enjoying this content, drop a 1 in the comments. I'm serious. Like, this is why I really resonated with this channel when I came across it. And so my mom, everybody knows my mom had a brain aneurysm coming back from Iraq War. They had to fly her over to Germany. Then they flew her over, Walter Reed. Crazy scenario, but she was absolutely great. Like, could drive, talk, do whatever. So much so that she went back to work on a military base. And 2 years later, they called her like, Sergeant Grant, what are you doing in an office? You're supposed to be medically retired, And so she's like, great. I've been confused at work for a year now. So she's gone. But what we do every summer is we go to Alaska and we do something different. We either go to Alaska, we go to some other place. This year I'm taking her to Alaska and we're fishing for halibut, and then we're riding horses, and I just tell people, you don't know how much time you have with your parents. You just never do. And, my father died when I was in college. My grandmother and my father died within 6 months of each other in college. And I failed that whole year. The school was like, you had perfect age forever. So we're just going to scratch this year. And you can take an extra year. So I was like one of those 5th year seniors. And I'm like, I wasn't even partying. I just had a, death in the family. So I just tell people, like, kids, my nephews, I've taken my nephews to Yellowstone National Park and Florida, and I would not trade all the money in the world. I've been very successful with this YouTube thing for over a decade now, and I've made sure it wasn't just me sticking at a computer. It wasn't me just looking at a computer talking to you guys. It was two-stepping on Fridays, country music, it's going to rodeos, it's family. And that's what really the money is for. That's what we go to work for, so that we can enjoy the time. And I don't think people understand that. And you'll be out there snorkeling and scuba diving. There is an older Black man here in Houston who builds apartments. He's in his 60s, dyes the hair jet black, and he's like, I'm going, scuba diving next month. And you see this guy super tall. You're like, when you got time, it's nice. It's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, it's nice if you're not tied to a job, because living in the Seattle area, this is not the best scuba diving water, right? It's cold, it's murky. And if I only had a week to go somewhere for a good dive, 2 days would be lost in travel on the front end and back end. But if I go, like I'm going to Thailand, I'm probably going for 2 months.
Yeah.
I might stay longer. I don't know. But 2-day travel or day and a half travel is nothing if you're there for a couple of months.
Right.
You mentioned the thing about, putting your money to work. And I think this is a LeBron quote. For me, there's so much more to life than money. And it comes from the quote of, when you don't have enough, money is the only thing. But as soon as you have enough, it's just a thing.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because I don't think I would have believed that quote until I got to the point where at the very end of my job working at the CDL school, I had a couple of ideas that really grew the school. So they gave me what are called golden handcuffs. Basically, if the sale of the school ever happened, I would get about $2 million.
Right.
I walked away from that because the cash flow from the rentals, the financial freedom that came with it, it wouldn't change my life. There's nothing more I would go do. And until you get to a point, I don't know if anybody would believe me saying that, because I would think somebody, oh, you're crazy. Millions of dollars means everything. No, and when I did retire, a ton of the companies that we worked with reached out and thought, maybe I didn't retire, maybe I got fired. Here's a job offer. And I walked away from multiple 6-figure job offers because money's just a thing, and it's never going to control me again.
I love it. You guys, you definitely put your questions in. They know to wait a little bit when I have a guest on so we can focus. I'm a little ADHD, so I'll be like, questions. But Dr. K put, Washington State has a more pro-landlord or pro-tenant laws. My concerns are squatters and unfriendly landlord rental practices in California. There's hardly any protections in law enforcement. And I love your explanation on your blue state living. Go ahead.
So, in each state, I believe in every state, there are no blue states or red states. What you have is blue counties and red counties. So in LA, yes, I would not want to own a rental. If I lived in LA, which is where I grew up, I was born in Saugus, lived out in Palmdale, like I'm an LA County person. I joined the Marines to get out of there, and they put me in 29 Palms. So
right down the street.
Right down the street. My brother has 3 rentals out in Kern County. Much more landlord friendly, but it's in a blue state. That's what people call it. I know there's blue counties and red counties. I wouldn't own in Washington State, in Seattle, or King County, where Seattle is. I own in Pierce and Thurston and Kitsap counties all the way around it, which are pretty much red counties. But if you talk to almost every investor, most investors say they want to invest in, like my friend Mike that invests in Gary, Indiana. Very landlord friendly. I heard Grant Cardone say this on Bigger Pockets one time, and it really stuck with me. I don't want to own in landlord-friendly states. Imagine the amount of competition you have. It's easier to build. There's less regulation. So in a blue state, there's more regulation, which means less competition. There's more regulation for building, which means less inventory. So with just 8 properties and 18 units in Washington, I make $250,000 a year or so. In Gary, Indiana, it would take 80 rentals to come close. And I self-managing, I can handle it. I wouldn't want to do 80. So I don't invest for appreciation. I invest for things like this. Washington State right now has rent control on the. It was proposed, it passed out of committee, so it's a bill now. That will it'll triple my income if it goes through. Most people think rent control is bad for landlords. No. Most years I wouldn't do a rent increase. Maybe I do 5% every other year. I have the binder strategy when I buy a property, and I'll get rents where I need them to go. But then it's 5% every other year. Well, if Washington State passes the rent control, their cap is 7%. And since I can never make a bigger adjustment than that, I'm forced to go 7% every year. So instead of 5% in 2 years, I'm going to get 14% in 2 years, which almost triples what I'm going to make. So the laws that people say are not landlord friendly make landlords rich. So there's a specific reason why I target those states. Now, it doesn't mean I wouldn't own in Gary, Indiana with my friend. It's just pick the one you understand and the one that matches your strategy.
Yeah. I mean, So everybody knows, like I had several rentals in Detroit and Cleveland. Now Cleveland decided, we're gonna get a little bit more landlord friendly, just a little bit. And Detroit was like, nah, let's let everybody live for free 2 years with COVID, right? And so I just tell people, like, you need to really have a good team. You need to have some kind of foot on the ground, or you can invest in your own backyard and be your own management. People think, oh my God, I don't want to do it. Toilets, Ericka. Oh my God, somebody's going to call me about a bathroom. And I'm like, that's what you have a handyman for. That's what you have, like, 1-800 numbers you can call. What are some of the ways you self-manage that make it less of a headache, if that's the word we're looking for?
So one of the reasons I call myself the lazy landlord is I think I'm really lazy. Like, my family owns tree services. My two brothers had tree service. My dad had a tree service. And I joined the Marines because that was easier, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was way easier than tree work. So being a single parent, working full time, I didn't want to invest in an asset that would take a lot of time, right? So you would think I would invest in stocks, but I didn't make a lot of money and I didn't have decades for compound interest to do its thing. So that's why stocks are great, didn't match my strategy. I wanted 10 years on a low income to reach financial freedom. So I started buying rentals. And in that first year, it felt like it took 20 hours a week to manage one tenant. Like, I did everything wrong. I didn't have a lease. I didn't have handymen. I didn't have systems in place to handle things. And I realized I was the problem.
Yeah.
It wasn't the tenant. It was me. I was not educated. I went out and found Rich Dad, Poor Dad, bigger pockets, one rental at a time. Communities like this where people talk about investing and share ideas, got into the chat, started asking my questions, finding the answers, got my systems in place to where when you own a rental, I educate my tenants. The first thing I do so that I don't get phone calls is there's 3 words you can use that it's okay to call me.
Okay.
If the conversation is going to have these 3 words, it's okay to call me, and I should be your second call. If the conversation is going to include fire, flood, or blood, call me. Everything else, text or email, right? Yeah. Those are one of the 2 things that I need. And so that cuts down on the calls. And so 12 years of investing, my first duplex was 2013 when I closed on it. And so 2025, 12 years, I've had one phone call after 8 o'clock. So that the big boogeyman that everyone's so afraid of, don't ever do this because your tenants will call you all the time. It's happened once. And what I do is I build a binder. It's literally a 3-ring binder. And I've got a couple of those, I guess. But on there, I built a list and check on Google every now and then to make sure. These are the plumbers with 24-hour a day, 7-day a week service. These are the electricians with 7-day a week service. Doesn't have to be 24 hours a day. These are the contractors that I've worked with. There's an app called Thumbtack. I'll put that in the chat here.
For sure.
This is the app. What I do is I go on Thumbtack and I'll hire a contractor for a small repair. Go install screens, go fix a drywall crack, go whatever. How did they interact with the tenant? How prompt were they with communication? What were their prices? Like, that's a factor too. Right. Get a couple bids. But then I build a list of contractors from the Thumbtack app and I learn from them and I go, okay, this guy likes to do flooring but doesn't want to do carpet. This person is also a plumber. This person is. So I've got this list of minimum 3, usually 5 or 6 people that I can call. And once they've been to a unit to do something, the tenant, the person, and me are in a group text.
Right.
And I have a conversation with the contractor. Like, you can do pretty much any repair up to $500. Above $500, you have to get permission first. And if it's going to include buying any materials, check with me because I might have a better deal.
Right.
And I'm trying to think, with 18 units, my biggest month when I had a tenant turnover was about 5 hours of work that entire month. Most months it's about 30 minutes. So I think the average throughout a year takes me 2 hours a month to make $21,000 that I'm trying to figure out how to spend. Yeah. So while working full-time and raising kids, I had to put systems in that made it easy, which is why I call myself the lazy landlord, because if you want to find the easy way to do something, ask the lazy person. But in retirement, it really set me up to just have time freedom.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Somebody said Thumbtack is a great resource. Somebody said, yes, I used Thumbtack when I bought my first house. Got a few questions. Mobile Home Geek. DION, do you recommend, I think he went to put he put a quotation mark, recommend paying off student loan debt before investing in real estate?
So figure out if it impacts your debt to income ratio. That could be a factor too. I had $89,000 in debt, and I'll keep this as brief as possible. It was actually $313,000 in debt in my name. So if you have a bunch of debt, here's what I learned when I found this. I went through the divorce, found out we had all this debt. It's my debt because she files bankruptcy. So I was calling the lenders to go, who are you? How do I pay this? What do I owe you? And one of them just casually mentioned, if you're thinking about filing bankruptcy like your ex did, we'll take 20% of what you owe. The light bulb came on, so I called every single one of them. And now I was thinking of going back into law enforcement. So bankruptcy was not an option, but I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't lie. I just called all of them and said, hey, I'm thinking about bankruptcy. Is there a lower amount that you would take? Everyone but Discover, a dentist, and some party apartment that we rented I didn't know about, they took the full amount, but everyone else took 20 or 30%. So 313 got dropped down to 89,000. So you could take that, maybe improve your situation. But I have 3 categories of debt. So this was for Mobile Home Geek, which I love. All my brother's rentals, almost all of them are mobile homes. So it's a good strategy. But 3 categories of debt. If you talk to most people, they're just going to say all debt is bad.
Right.
Dave Ramsey fans, and for people who follow him, great advice.
Yep.
If you don't invest. For me, there's bad debt and good debt. So now you can get, most people will understand. Robert Kiyosaki said, if you get good debt, somebody else pays it off. It makes more money than it costs you. And the more good debt you can get, the more free you are. I had a 3rd category, worse debt. So when I started on the $89,000, I took everything that was just bad debt and I made the minimum payments. And I took half my money. What was left, I divided it in half. So like I had to pay to live, food, housing, car, all that stuff. I put the minimum payments on the bad debt, but everything that was left, I cut in half. And half of it was saved for the debt, the first duplex, right? So I'm saving to build good debt.
Yeah.
But the other half was put towards worse debt, which is anything with an adjustable rate or anything with a really high interest rate. So the question with your student loans would be, what is the rate? Does it adjust? If it can all of a sudden next year go up to 8 or 9%, and if it's 3 now, I'd probably focus on paying some of it off. If you have fixed rate student debt and it's not a high interest rate, if it's 6 or lower, I'd probably make minimum payments while saving. And then once you have the asset, so about year 6, when I said that income snowball kicked in, cash flow from rentals, making more at my job, house hacking to reduce my expenses, the worst debt was gone. It was very easy to pay off the bad debt.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really hard in the beginning. I would start getting some good debt going or some investing going. Split your money in half. Get rid of that worst debt first.
For sure. Thank you for that. We have Brandy Williams, accountant tax. She owns a tax office in Georgia. She said, how do you vet your tenants? What are your top qualifying characteristics?
That's a great question because it's I want to say it's probably top 3 things that makes being a landlord possible.
Right.
If you don't vet your tenants right, then it becomes work. Now it's a job, and you will probably not want to buy more rentals because they mean more work. Yeah. So vetting your tenants for me, now I have about a 1/3 military, a 1/3 Section 8, a 1/3 working and retired. I don't tend to look at income. A lot of landlords look at income, and what you do is you end up losing people who could be good tenants. Waiter, cosmetologist, bartender, people who make most of their money through tips, right? So you lose possible good tenants. I focus heavily on, first, this is a rule, no evictions ever. I don't care if it was in 1890, like whenever it happened. If they've learned that the courts will let you live in a house for free for a while, I don't want them in my property. So that's a rule. Then there's a guideline. I go with at least a 700 credit score, and I have Section 8 tenants with an 830, 831 credit score is what she's got. Most people think Section 8, their brain goes to low income.
Right.
Low income can be challenging, but Section 8 isn't low income, it's fixed income. So think disabled veteran, person with disability, with special needs people in their family, fixed income, very easy for them to have high credit scores. So figure out what's high for your area. My area, 650 is kind of normal for tenants. 700 is high. So I go with the 700 credit score. I don't generally check criminal backgrounds. For a while, I was using apartments.com and Zillow. Right now, I use a platform called Hemlane, Hema. I'll put it in the chat. Okay. It's for managing your own rentals. It's a platform where you can advertise your rentals, get credit reports, eviction histories. Zillow and apartments, it's free for the owner to do that. Cost the applicant some money to apply. But the biggest screening that I have, when I have a tenant turnover, so I have tenant, like I had a guy in the Air Force that moved out about a year ago, and I had a tenant turn over at his place. I do open house viewing. So this is at a fourplex. So I've got mostly duplexes, one triplex, one fourplex. And at the fourplex, I don't do showings. I do open house showings. I'll respond to everybody who's interested, and I'll say, hey, I'll be at the property Thursday from 5 to 7 or Saturday from noon to 2. Like I said, whenever you have a tenant turnover, it takes the most time.
Mm-hmm.
But I want everybody to come at the same time. And other investors said, oh, that's smart. That builds, whatever you call it, competition. And that's
scarcity.
Scarcity.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is, it's a fourplex. I'm responsible for 3 other tenants. I want to see how the possible tenant interacts with me. Very easy to be yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, with the person who controls the decision. But how do they interact with the other applicants? If they're rude with somebody and they don't like step back, give them a chance to walk through or open a door for somebody, I don't want that person living next to my tenant. So there's the tangibles. What's your credit score? No evictions. There's the intangibles. How do they interact with somebody who doesn't control the decision? And I've generally ended up with pretty good tenants that way.
That's good. That's good. And excuse me, Brandy Williams has a full service accounting firm. I stand corrected. For sure. Good stuff, you guys. Jay said, this is exactly how, as a locksmith working for property management companies, I go to the same properties over and over and know it better than the owners in some sense. So everybody's saying, thank you, Dion. Thank you for the information. So I said, Thumbtack's a great source. Yeah, don't be scared, you guys. You can put any questions or comments you have in here. We're respecting Dion's time, but I wanted to pull him before he goes traveling the world, gallivanting.
So I'll just make this offer for you. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do a live stream that lasts about 2 hours, and I answer all these kind of questions. Love to have you come and answer questions in one of those too.
For sure. I'd love it. And my thing is, what are some of the, just if somebody didn't know Washington State or Seattle area, what are some great things about the area? Because your videos always have like the water in the background. I said, this guy's living on a mountaintop somewhere with the water behind him. What are some, good things that you can share? Because we think Seattle, we think Amazon. Most people go, okay, Amazon.
Think Amazon. Yeah. So
that's it.
So to me, when I think Washington State, the last thing I think is Seattle. The waterfront to go have lunch there is the only part of Seattle I would go to. The rest of it's gone, lost their mind.
It's a little cuckoo.
When I think the Pacific Northwest, I'm just weird. I grew up in the desert out in Palmdale and Lancaster, right? The Mojave Desert area out there. I was actually out in Rosamond, if you know that area. Joined the Marines because it was easy and it got me out of there. They put me in 29 Palms, Desert Storm, Kuwait, like all the places where there's just dirt. So when I moved out, I looked at the whole country and I love the rain. I wanted out of the desert. So I looked at, okay, Washington it rains and Maine it rains and all the Stephen King crazy stories are over in Maine. So I moved to Washington.
Maine, yeah.
And so we have a lot of rain. We don't have a lot of big bugs. There's really no poisonous snakes. There's no alligators. There's no pythons. There's nothing there's no hurricanes, no tornadoes. It has everything that I like except good scuba. So I like to live here, but I travel so much, it works out for me. What I like about Washington, and you can Google this because I like to say things that can be fact checked. It's the #1 appreciating state in the United States for over 20 years. So while I've never done a home equity line of credit, never done a cash out refinance, never sold for 1031, all I've done is save a down payment, buy a property, save a down payment, buy a property, sometimes move into them, like very simple, really basic. My cash flow is good, but in 2020, well, up to that point, making $60,000 a year, my net worth passed $1 million. Since 2020, it's past $3 million. Now, I'm not going to touch it. I don't plan on doing any cash out refinance. I don't plan on selling. Maybe someday. Actually, I've thought about this. Over about a 5-year period, start selling and 1031ing into Texas. I've got a nephew who moved to San Antonio, a niece that went to Austin. So I'm thinking, like that's what I said, there's some great places to go there. I don't know where I might end up, but it's nice to have options. And that's the whole point of buying and owning an asset for a while. Gives you options that people just don't have. If all a person does is work from 9 to 5 and never works from 5 to 9, they will work to 70.
If they, I always tell people, take a sheet of paper. What are some places you want to go? What are things you want to do? Or there's this really great thing. I was at a conference one time and it said, describe yourself. I had wrote it down because I wanted to tell it to you before we did this. Okay. Oh, okay. I remember. Without describing yourself as like a wife, a mother, or your job title, tell me 3 things about yourself. And I was like, you could see people's eyes were like, I don't know how to do this, task. And I was like, that's what they mean. They want you to live, you guys. They want you to have hobbies, go do stuff. I always like I found that and I was like, Dion might appreciate that one. That was a good
Nice.
one, I thought.
I love it.
But it's like when you ask people questions like, are you living? And even here we have the hill country. If you ever come, it's gonna be very toasty. I'll let you know now. But you get used to it, your blood gets used to it. But we have an amazing hill country, and the place where I want to get my ranch is south of Austin, but there is some great opportunities. Water, you name it, it's really nice. So I hope you get a chance to come out here some more. People have beautiful things they're saying. This guy's got it figured out. I used to live in Renton and drive to Kirkland Waterfront. You may know where that is.
I do. That's in King County. That's the area. So if you come to Washington, don't go there. I think there's a reason why you used to live in Renton, used to go to Kirkland, because that's not a great area.
Yeah, okay, got you. Then you have thanks, Dion, for sharing your experience. Really great information. Lots of mini casinos. Okay, right. The natives out there for sure. Thanks, Dion. Just up to your channel. What's his name? You guys, I put his channel in here. It'll also be in the description. It's a Dion Financial Talk. I know I'm covering up his thing right here, but Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Also, I saw you had the show with the
Lumberjack landlord. Yeah, he lives in the Boston area, outside of Boston.
Okay.
He is an 8th grade dropout.
Yep.
The only person I won't play chess with. He's that smart. He's that far beyond me in intelligence. But he's got 140 something units as an 8th grade dropout.
Mm-hmm.
One of the projects he's doing now is he bought a jail and he's converting it to some veteran home, to some rentals. He is what I call an operator.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not good at rehab. So don't
Right.
ask me what's the best thing to put in your rental to get the best rent. I would call Matt, the lumberjack landlord.
Yeah.
He's an operator. He knows how to optimize his rentals. He's done so many flips and burrs, and he has all this experience. I'm the simple. I want to, like most people want a big portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
I want the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. That's been my mantra on investing. I don't want a bunch of them. I want the right amount.
Right.
If I wanted a big portfolio, the lumberjack landlord too, I'd follow. And I follow him to optimize mine because I do have a tenant turnover occasionally. And so here's an example of how good he is. I listed a couple of rentals and I get some demand. It's not bad. But I think of rentals as an owner. We'll say things like age of building, square footage, everything. I go to him and we make a listing together. And he goes over like the marketing mindset of what a listing should look like. And instead of talking like I am, he's talking about things that are within walking distance, within driving distance, location areas, pet friendly fenced yard instead of picture of the yard, like all these things. I would get so much demand from his listings that's kind of why I started doing the open house. I was like, wow, there's way too many people. There's no way I'm going to go meet 50 people to look at a rental. And so if somebody's got a portfolio, like here's why you should do it, and here's how you get started person. He's the how you do it right person.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I tell people, like, is it close to a Starbucks? Is it close to a Chick-fil-A? Then I'm like, oh, that's a good rental. Like, it's an up and coming area. It's rich over there, or you're in Austin. People are over here, and it's some areas that they have regentrified here in Austin for sure. But it's been a beautiful opportunity.
So if I could. When somebody's looking at choosing a property type, here's two quick kind of things. The first one is understand the property definitions. Right now, Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets has an article that's out, and you can look it up, called Class of Properties. And he goes Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D, and he breaks them down what they are. I specifically want Class C properties. I don't want high-end luxury, because in a recession or in an economic downturn, those people, if they lose their job, have to downsize. Or if they want to buy a house, they have the money and means to do it. I don't want Class B because they tend to be really picky. I don't want Class D. That sounds like you had some rentals that were in a kind of dangerous area. I don't want the Class D war zone type areas. And if you're around Tacoma, that's literally like there's a street called McKinley Avenue. 3
Right.
blocks on either side, don't buy there. Like, I know my market that well.
Yeah.
But I want Class C. I want where the teacher lives, where the cop lives, where the fireman lives, where the truck
Mhm.
driver lives. Because I've had people making $25, $30 an hour if they lose their job. Unemployment covers their rent. And
Yeah.
it's actually not that hard to go replace their $25 or $30 an hour job. It's not easy,
Mhm.
but it's not that hard. If somebody has a Class B or a high-end rental and their tenant makes $150,000 a year in IT and they get laid off, it's pretty difficult to go find another $150,000 a year job,
Mhm.
and unemployment isn't going to pay for your tenant. So
Mhm.
targeting those Class C, if there's a recession, there's more demand. And so another good thing that you can Google is rents since 1940, when we started tracking the data, have
Yep.
never once gone down, except in 2009. Class A went down so far, it looks like rents went down. But in 2009, millions of people lost their houses because of the 2008 housing
Right.
crash recession, right? They became renters, which
Mhm.
increased demand on rentals, and rents went up for Class C properties. So I'm diversified with the location of properties, the 3 different
Mhm.
types of tenants, but into specifically properties that benefit from bad financial times. Now, I don't jack up the rent. I don't kick
Yeah.
the tenants out. It's just, I know if a recession happens, I'm covered.
Right. I see you guys' questions. I'm going to put them on the screen here. Listen, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I have a Section 8 tenant in Cleveland, but she's a nurse. She had a stroke, a mini stroke. So she can still work as a nurse like 1 to 2 times a week. So they've like locked her in for her money because it's like some heroes campaign. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But essentially, like when Section 8 came and they're like, oh, we're not going to pass you because you're missing a cover on one of your little plugs and your front porch paint is peeling. That lady was out there painting. I said, the handyman came by and was like, there's a woman on the porch painting. What do you want me to do? And I'm like, let her finish. Let her finish. Just cover the electrical. But people really love people when they get moved in and they put their stuff in, they've decorated the walls. They don't like moving. And I know you tell people that you put your leases in the winter. No one likes moving in the winter. No
Right?
one. Or my uncles, what they do in North Carolina is put a nice big shed in the backyard and tell them, hey, the shed, yeah, here you go. Here's the key. Once people fill that shed up, they do not want to empty that shed. It's a hassle.
Yeah. So my goal with being the lazy landlord, the lazy investor, is to have low tenant turnover. So I have strategies like that. I prefer to buy properties that have washer dryer hookups because somebody using a shared laundry or a laundromat is waiting for the place to open that doesn't.
Yeah.
I want a shed or at least a garage because more stuff means more space, less likely to move.
Yeah.
I want my duplexes, whenever possible, to be side by side. If they're over unders, you have noise complaints or a plumbing issue hits both of them. I want fenced yards and I allow pets because people with pets are less likely to move. Because even if the human moves with the pet, it's a pet relocation. And so they're more likely to stay. And I do have almost all but one of my leases ends in December or January because, and most people will say, well, I'm a landlord. I want my leases in the summer because it's easier to find a tenant. Well, it's easier to find a tenant because more people move, and you said it. Nobody wants to move in the winter. So I'm probably up to 10, maybe 11 tenant turnovers now in over a decade. And so it's averaging like one a year, but it's not that many. And tenant turnovers aren't bad. It would be expensive if you had a lot. It would be frustrating if you had a lot. But one a year means I get to rehab the unit, go to market rents, be the shiny new unit on the area. And so that's my investing strategy, is to keep the tenants long-term whenever possible so that it's less work for me. So I'm more likely to continue to add properties because it doesn't add to the workload.
Right. I have a tenant that wants to move back and they never were late. They never had an issue. They just had a little baby. So walking up and down the stairs was unappealing. Carrying this bassinet thing was unappealing. Now the kid's a toddler. They're like, can we move back? We really love that unit. And I'm like, okay, let me see, let's see what the landlord said, the property management says for right now. Dr. K said, is there anything we should consider regarding interest rates and paying off properties prior to buying another one and building a real estate portfolio?
That's a great question. I target 4 units or less, which is called residential. If it's 5 units or more, it's called commercial. Commercial lending and residential lending is very different. And it's the main reason I'm in 4 units or less. And there are some lending options that will give you what I call fixed rate debt on more than 4 units. But my portfolio so far is built on 4 units or less. So I have 30-year fixed rate debt. Some of my purchases were at 8%, some were at 6% because I was buying from 2013 till now. And there have been times 2018 interest rates were above 6%.
Yeah.
And at the time we felt prices were high because incomes were low, right? So it's all, there's a lot of levers in there. I like to buy a property that cash flows when I buy it and has fixed rate debt. So I'm not worried about rates changing in the future. They can go to 50% and I wouldn't care because mine's fixed. I want to buy it where I'm not counting on rents going up. I want to the cash flows from day one. And so that's my mindset. But I'm also watching interest rates. So in 2020, when I had a bunch of interest rates between 6 and 8%, I refinanced pretty much everything I had before then to 3% and increased cash flow. So if you buy it now at 7 or 8% or 6%, if you buy the rate down, fixed rate debt means if interest rates go up, who cares? If interest rates come down more than, in my mind, it was like 1.5 points. So if I have a 6, if I went to 4.5, I'd refinance, making it worth it. Fixed rate debt, only thinking of buying it down. As far as paying off the debt, the last thing that I want is a paid off property.
Yep.
I purchased properties putting a down payment. So you get these two things called levered appreciation. So I'll take a property I purchased where my friend lost $100,000 because I remember these numbers from that video.
Yep.
2021, I put $100,000 down on a property. It's $400,000. So I'm 25% down.
Yep.
I purchased the debt because if it goes up 5% in value, I don't gain from my 100,000 a 5% increase. So that'd be $5,000. I gain 5% on the 400,000. So it's called levered appreciation. So I would gain $20,000 instead of 5. But you also have levered depreciation. I put down $100,000. The property's worth 4. The building's probably worth 3. I'm writing off $300,000 over 27 and a half years. I still haven't paid a penny in rental income tax, and I make hundreds of thousands a year in profit. So levered depreciation, and here's the joke I always make. It's like Congress is full of property owners that keep making laws that benefit property owners. It's so weird. I don't know why.
It's so interesting. Yeah, and the stock market, it's like they keep benefiting from these two unique directions.
And so in 2018, the rule was you were allowed to have 4 conventional mortgages in your name. It's 10 right now. It was 10 before 2008. But because of the banking crisis, they limited you to 4. So I was in a position where I got to 4 and I focused and paid one off. I paid off a property that I owed about $121,000 on it. It took like a year and a half. I was taking all the cash flow and just paying it off. At the same time, the next year, basically, I bought a fourplex where the down payment was $109,000. On the fourplex, it cash flows almost $5,000 a month, that one property. It's gone up about $1 million in value. So I've made $1 million in profit in equity.
Yep.
The house that I paid off cost me $1 million because I could have bought another fourplex.
Yeah.
So paying off debt cost me $1 million. And then you lose the most important thing that you get from having a mortgage. It's not levered appreciation, depreciation. It's not the tax benefits. It's asset protection. If I'm ever sued, I have 8 properties. I bought my last one cash and I paid off that house. Those 2 properties are at risk in a lawsuit. But the 6 properties that have mortgages, banks are in first position and nobody can touch them.
Bingo.
So yeah, there's Dr. Kez, great question. But then there's one more last thing to touch on here. What state of your investing are you in? In growth mode, paying off debt would never make sense. In stabilization mode, it could. But once you're retired and you're not adding properties and paying off debt can make it possible for you to sell or finance your whole portfolio to somebody else because there's no debt on it. Yes. So there are people it makes sense for. For me, so far in my investing, it hasn't.
I love it. I love it. You guys, I just want you to understand, like, you know, all them LifeLock commercials. They're like, you got to pay it off house. You better have that LifeLock.
Yeah, it's super risky.
Yeah, it's super risky. And like, people, listen, I love the part where you said you had the friends you were trying to convince, and there was like a boomer or doomer at the table. Can you go over that story really quickly? And then I got like one question I see in here. We'll go over it.
So, I'm sorry, repeat the question. I'm sorry.
You had some friends like there was a property across the street.
Oh yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, you know, like you guys should totally buy it.
Yeah. This was my friend lost $100,000, and that's just part of it, because I bought that property where I put $100,000 down on a $400,000 property in 2021. So this is only 4 years ago. It's not like 1980, right?
Right.
4 years ago, I buy it. It's going to get about a 10% cash on cash return, right? I was putting down a little over 100,000. It was going to make about $12,000 that year. So it ended up being around a 10% cash on cash return. The one across the street was for sale, identical. Like it was the same contractor built them, same year. And I told my friend, who reached out and said, how can I do this thing? And I went to their house and I explained, I'm buying this. I have the funds to buy one. I would buy both. I don't have the funds. They had the money to buy the other one. But our friends, who weirdly, he has 30 rentals paid off. He's retired. He came swooping in and he said, actually, I'm watching all of the YouTube channels and they're saying, this was in 2021.
Right.
So in 2020, we had the pandemic. Some people went into forbearance, whether you were working or not. You could just say, I don't want to pay my mortgage for the next year.
Right.
So in 2021, all of the crash bros, those are the people who make videos every 3 days. There's a new reason why everything's going to crash.
Crash.
Exactly. They were saying forbearance is going to end in 2021. So their year is up. That's going to flood the market and properties are going to drop. They were saying 20, 30%. Now, the largest market-wide drop we've ever seen for all of real estate in 1 year, in a 12-month period, is 8.9%. But people are saying there's 20 to 40% drop 2 months away, telling you how much they don't know about real estate.
Exactly.
So my friends didn't buy the property. I bought it for $400,000. I put $100,000 down now. It's worth over $600,000. It's appreciated that much in Washington. So there's over $200,000 in growth. If I sold it, I'd have to pay agent fees, right? So about 8% I'd lose to that. But I made more than $100,000 in profit. And the cash flow is a little over $2,000 a month from that one duplex. So my friend, since 2021, is not making $2,000 a month and didn't get double. It would have been $100,000 down to get almost $200,000 out of it in growth, because he'd get his 100,000 back and the 100,000 in growth and pay the agents. And I made the video, and at the end of it, I think I was a little too honest because some friends reached out. I feel like I failed my friend. Like I don't have the articulate skills to communicate how good a deal this was. Even saying, I'm buying one, you should too, didn't do it. And I just feel like I failed my friends.
Like, I'm buying across the street. It's going to be a good thing. I think it's going to win. That's kind of how I feel when I come on this YouTube channel. I'm like, you guys, I'm trying to tell you, it's going to be awesome. Somebody asked, what was your credit score when you bought the first property? Because the income was lower and they're just trying to figure out what was the credit score, When
I started saving to buy, my credit score was, I think there was a 3 handle on the beginning of it. I mean, it was bad. All the debt that I inherited that I didn't know about. So I spent 2 years and I educated myself on credit score, and I got it up to, I think, 650 when I bought the first one. It hovers around 800 now. I can actually open up Credit Karma and show you whatever it is now. It's 8 something. But in the beginning, what I did was, there's a thing called credit utilization. And so if you have a credit card with a limit of about $5,000 and you use $1,000 every month, then you pay it off. So you don't want to carry a balance and you get it down to 0, but you go up to 1,000 every month. That's 20% credit utilization. You're using 20%. Well, anything over 10 knocks about 30 points off your score. So instead of spending less, because I still had the same bills, cell phone, internet, right, all the stuff. I think back then I had cable before we got rid of that. But call the credit card company and ask for your credit limit to go up. So that $5,000 card went to $11,000. I still spent about $1,000 and paid it off. Spent $1,000, paid it off because all the bills were on there, right? That's less than a 10% credit utilization. And that shot my score up about 30 points right off the bat. And then consistent payments and get rid of, a lot of the debt to income ratio stuff. What you make isn't really factored into your credit score as much as the debt that you have, the longevity. When a credit card is at 0, don't cancel it. Because you lose the history of how long you've had the card. But I would go to YouTube University, where we are, watch a whole bunch of videos on how do I improve my credit. At 620 or higher, you can usually get conventional loans. At 580 or higher, you can use an FHA loan, which is a terrible, terrible loan product that nobody should use. It's not meant for first-time home buyers.
Oh my gosh.
Use a conventional loan if you can. It's
I know. People love FHA. But
They
yeah,
do.
tell them, yeah.
The mortgage insurance stays for the length of the loan.
Yeah.
You can only have one at a time. You're less likely to get an offer accepted by the seller because there's more hoops to jump through. But if you go conventional, so many people say, well, do FHA. It's only 3.5% down. Well, your first conventional loan, 3% down. Better.
Yeah.
And the mortgage insurance disappears automatically when your equity passes that 22% that they need. It's 20% if you're putting a down payment, 22% if the equity is growing. But I've never used FHA. I still haven't used my VA loan. I've got that in my back pocket.
That's crazy. He's like, I'm gonna get a mansion on this now.
Right, I might someday.
Well, you know, there several of the veterans here in Texas. I don't know if you ever come to Texas, but you can get an acre of land. It's a part of the veteran benefits of Texas. That's why people love Texas, right? So I had one friend, one of our students from Germany. He got out and he was retiring, and he got an acre of land over here in Georgetown, Texas. Before it was popular, built a fourplex on it, and everybody's like, that dude's it's probably worth $800,000, almost $1 million now, because it was as the traction towards Georgetown was building up like crazy. So it's really awesome. So you guys, Dion put in there, would you ever want him to come back? I see a lot of your comments. Yes, please. Would love for you to come back. Heck yeah, the knowledge is great. Like, subscribe. Yeah, listen, I took my glasses off. Y'all know what I'm doing. I'm trying to read. I'm hitting that it's just like that 1 year where the eyes are like, yeah, you're gonna put your glasses on. You're gonna
My brother just went through the lens surgery.
Ooh, the LASIK.
And he is 20/20 vision, like he is a 19 again. It's so weird.
And he's cutting up. He's cutting up, isn't he? He's like, look at me. I got her to see. Tons of yeses in the chat. They love it. You know, at the end of the day, the only question people had was like, do you put properties in a trust for your kids? And I think you've had a pretty strong answer about LLCs that people might be surprised on, but yeah, if you want to share it.
So there's a video on my channel called Why You Probably Don't Need an LLC. A lot of new investors, when they're starting out, get stopped in their tracks. And this is why this becomes such an important topic for me to cover.
Right.
There are times it makes sense to have an LLC. Because I'll go over two things first. If it's just you or you and your spouse, there are no tax benefits. In 1996, the IRS determined all LLCs to be disregarded entities unless they're partnerships. And there's no liability cover. None. Unless you have partners. If you have partners, an LLC I would require. I wouldn't own properties with somebody else without an LLC. If you use hard money because you're doing something like the Burr method where you need hard money to secure the deal, and the lender requires an LLC, sure, have an LLC. But so many people, to start in real estate, learning a market, picking a strategy, learning your asset class, learning how to run the math on a cash-on-cash return. How do you find your tenants? How do you screen your tenants? How do you maintain a property? Where do you get your leases from? Like, there's a mountain of knowledge, right? It's all here on YouTube University. Why would you add, how do you form the LLC? How do you name the LLC? How do you pay from yourself from the LLC? How do you finance it when they can't let you house hack an LLC because it can't be in your own name if you're going to get the owner financing? You put all these barriers in front of you. So if you have partners, or if your lending requires it, LLC is great. But there's no asset protection, no tax benefits. And maybe, I just did an interview with David Myers, the guy on Bigger Pockets. He's he's the replacement for the host.
I think so, yeah.
And he does a bunch of LLCs for everything, but he keeps buying. So for him, I said, great. I'm not worried about that guy. I'm worried about the person that doesn't own a rental, that thinks, oh, I got to get my LLC first, and then doesn't know how to buy a property. So the LLC, I don't think people need it unless those two reasons come up. The trust, it doesn't protect you. The trust protects your heirs. Yeah. Here's why. My properties are not in a trust, and my brothers are. So my nephew is buying rentals. He bought in San Antonio. He owns a rental up here in Washington. And so by the time my brother passes away, the trust would go to my nephew, who has experience in real estate, knows how to keep reserves, knows how to qualify for lending. The trust will move to somebody who knows how to manage it. My kids show no interest. They don't have anything to do with the rentals. Now, if they start in the future, this would change, right? But since they have no interest in the rentals, they have good jobs, they're doing their own lives. We do get along great. We do a lot of things. We go hiking and paddleboarding and scuba and everything together. But if I said to my kids, I made a trust, and then I pass away and they get the trust, they would lose the properties worse than probate. You see, probate would sell everything and they get what's left after the government takes a big share. What would happen with the trust is they would mismanage it. They would have no reserves. They would file bankruptcy and they would just lose the properties. So if you have an heir that says, I will put in the time, energy, and effort to learn how to run the asset class that you have in the trust, sure, have one. But if you make a trust and give it to kids that don't know what they're doing, even when they're in their 40s or 50s, you're just setting them up for failure, and probate would be better than a trust they don't know how to manage.
You guys, come on. Did I not bring the heat? I said I gotta get Dion on. Come on now. Everybody's like, love the honesty. And again, one of the things I heard when you were talking that, and then we'll close out with this, but he was like, 48% of people 55 to 65 have 0% saved. 40% of people to 401k don't put anything into it. And so when people are like, I need an LLC, I need a trust, I'm like, you just need the first step. I just want you to take the first step. That's it. Let's start there.
I love using data like that. This will be the last data that I'll use. So the 48% of Americans between the age of 55 and 65 that have zero saved for retirement, the next 10 years is going to happen. They're going to be 65. They're going to be 70. Whatever age you're at now, start. Doesn't have to be real estate. It can be your retirement accounts. It can be stocks, crypto, a side hustle. But start. Please start.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming through. I love it when I'm on the West Coast. If I'm, my brother's in Portland, we go to the games. We go do several things out there, Seattle and whatnot. But I get it. It like so many people. He said, I wish I knew about Dion when COVID-19 started. Yes, you guys know. Listen. So Dion, thank you so much. You guys, Dion Talk Financial Freedom is where you can find him. We put it in the chat. We're going to put it in the description. It's going to be pinned as the top comment on here. I'm super excited. Thank you for coming through. And I hope I get to get over there before you go run off to Thailand and eat good. I mean, that, what is that thing with the yellow? It's got the mango on it, sticky rice.
I don't know. It's probably got durian in it too. Yeah.
It's delicious. It's tasty. Yeah. No, not the one with the nasty durian, but the good one with the
you
mango.
Don't like it? I think it's a genetic thing. You either don't like it or like, I'll eat 10 of
something
them.
about taste it. Yeah, it's something about
whatever
taste.
It is.
Yeah. It's whatever that Thai dessert is. I love it. I love Thai food because North Carolina, where I'm from, Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, they won some award for Thai food.
Nice.
Some of the best. So, all right, you guys, this is your girl, Ericka from the Classy Climb blog. This is Mr. Dion. But listen, I'm going to let you actually do your own outro. I actually let the guests say where can they find you, Dion, online?
Thank you so much for hanging out with us for the hour, and I really appreciate the great questions. On YouTube, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, I do a live like this. It lasts about 2 hours, or as long as the questions do. And as a Desert Storm veteran that has some serious memory issues, all I do is speak transparently because I have to. I will never be able to remember if I said something wrong. So I just say, here's what I did. Here's how it worked out. Sometimes it worked out great. Sometimes it didn't. And I can't thank you enough, Ericka, for having me on, because it sounds like you've got some really cool people with some good questions that are ready for their next step.
That's right. All right, you guys. Thank you for coming through. Thank you, Dion. And I'll hit you up in the emails and text you later. So thank you for your time tonight.
This is David W. Williams, and I'm giving a testimony to Ericka Williams and her team. Because of the advertising relationship that we were able to develop, my company had the best month in the month of November for the whole year of 2024. And I'm talking about our sales were 3 or 4 times any other month during that particular year. And I know it's because of the relationship that I had with Ericka and how she worked with me as an advertising partner. So now here's the benefit of working with her and her team. She's going to communicate to you what you're going to get as a result of working with her. She's going to over deliver on her value that she's providing, right? And she's not going to do a one-off deal. She's going to really invest in your success, because she's really invested in making sure that you're going to get a success story from working with her as an advertising partner. So if you're looking to drive more sales, you're looking to bring in more leads, and you're also looking to get more exposure to what you're doing, you want to reach out to Ericka and ask her, can I advertise with you?